Her sex tape leaked in the city, so she escaped to her village, thinking the village will hide her. But then she found out that going back to her village was her worst decision ever. After Mary was discharged from the hospital, she resumed work at her office. Mary was the company's public relations officer and always had people come around her desk for help and advice. She was a very friendly and likable person, and her office desk was always busy. When she entered the office on that fateful morning, she hoped that some of her colleagues would come and console her for the damage her leaked sex video had caused her. But to her surprise, no one came around, not even her female friends at the office. Mary used to be the life of the office, but right now, no one wants to have anything to do with her. Mary thought that it was just a matter of time and all her colleagues will come back to her. So she decided to take a deep dive into work and forget about her colleagues. Minutes later, the CEO called Mary to his office. When she entered the office, she saw the chief operations officer also seated in the office. Their faces showed that there was trouble. Seeing their faces, Mary's heart skipped a beat. Then the CEO said to Mary, as the public relations officer of the company, you are the face of the company. But with the leaked sex video of yours, I'm sorry to inform you that you can no longer be the face of the company. You have been fired. When Mary heard this, she was shocked. Then she became confused and finally she broke down in tears. Mary cried uncontrollably in the CEO's office. She knew that she couldn't beg them to give her the job back. She understood that nothing could be done and her time at the company has come to an end. She cried and cried. In the end, she cleaned up the tears on her face and left the office. At the sunset, Mary returned home to continue her lonely life. Sacked from her job, Mary is now faced with the harsh realities of an unemployed and pregnant young lady. But Mary will not allow this pregnancy to stop her from living her life. So she decided to abort the pregnancy. Mary had never aborted a pregnancy before, so she decided to call her friends for some advice. She called Folake, who is one of her closest friends at the office. The phone rang severally, but no one picked the phone. She called again, but again no response. Then she called another friend, Julie, but Julie's number was not even reachable. Finally, she called Jane, her best friend. Jane picked up the phone but warned Mary never to call her again. Jane's reply shocked Mary. She believed that even if everyone will abandon her at her lowest moment, Jane will not abandon her. This was the first time Mary felt completely alone in this town. But Mary had heard about a pharmacist who was said to help young girls abort unwanted pregnancies, so she was willing to give the pharmacist a try, since no one was willing to help her. The next morning, while the sun was still rising, poor Mary was already at the front of the pharmacist's shop waiting for him to come and open the shop. On reaching his shop, the pharmacist was surprised to see a young beautiful woman waiting for him this early. The both went into the pharmacist's shop, and a moment later, the pharmacist started the abortion. The pharmacist used the crudest techniques and the crudest tools. Mary cried throughout the procedure. Throughout the procedure, Mary was crying and even wondered if the pharmacist knew what he was doing. At last, the pharmacist told Mary that he had successfully terminated the pregnancy. 3 days later, Mary was still in pains and also battled with the secret abortion like a heavy burden. The thought of the aborted pregnancy is consuming her. The echoes of her decision filled her thoughts. Every night in her dreams, she hears the cries of dead and abandoned children. Some nights, she dreams of herself passing through a path in a thick forest with babies abandoned in baskets on the side of the footpath. Mary suddenly became so afraid of nights. She needed to talk to someone, but there was no one to talk to. Mary is tired of life, but she knows one thing for sure. Even if the whole world is against her, her mother will forever love her. so she decided to go back to her parents' home and be with her mother.
Hi, whenever you are in need of help, visit www.anyservice.ng to find the best professionals and artisans to help you. You can also download the AnyService NG app on the Google Play Store.
As Mary packed her belongings to leave the town and its beautiful light, she knew that her life would take a different turn. At last, Mary arrived her childhood home. The small village embraced her with familiar warmth. Her parents were willing to help her get her life back. The bad dreams stopped and Mary was becoming happier as the days went by. Not long after, the village gossips began to ask questions. They wondered what a beautiful young graduate like Mary could be doing in the village. Gradually, the questions became stronger and suddenly the news of Mary's sex video arrived the village like a ghost. No one knew that Mary just committed an abortion, but when Mary's sex video entered the village, it was immediately shared on all social media platforms. The youth of the village now know about Mary's secret life. Whenever Mary passed where a group of youth were discussing, she could feel they either paused or continued in a lower tone. She knew that the conversation must have changed because she passed, and Mary didn't like it. There was a notorious gang of bad boys who terrorized the village. The boys also decided to get their own taste of Mary, so they started making advances at her. The village that Mary was thinking would be a safe haven has also become a nightmare for her. One evening, the door to the sitting room opened and Mary heard someone crying. It was her mom. She was just coming back from the farm when Mary's aunt stopped her on the way and told her to warn Mary to stay away from her daughter. Mary and her cousin had been good friends since their childhood days. Mary never had any intention of misleading her cousin, but her aunt does not want to see them together ever again. Mary's issues were becoming worse. As Mary watched her mom cry because of her, she couldn't even muster the courage to console her. Mary stood there looking at her mom as tears began to drop from her own eyes uncontrollably. Mary is a Catholic, but it has been ages since she went to church. The shiny life she was living in the small city pulled her away from the church. Determined to help herself, Mary decided to go to the church the next morning to see the priest. After the morning mass, Mary approached the priest for counseling. The Reverend Father listened to Mary keenly as Mary narrated her life story to him. Suddenly, Mary paused when she heard some members of the church choir in a distance murmur among themselves. She felt they were gossiping about her. Again, tears began to drop from her eyes and she stood up and left. The Reverend Father was surprised and confused as he watched Mary leave suddenly. Mary cried all the way home. As she cried, she talked to herself and gesticulated. People that saw her walking home thought she was mad. As she talked to herself, she concluded that she needed to go away from her village in order to help herself. Mary now believes that the saying, "No place like home," is not for everyone. When Mary reached home, she looked around and found no one at home. She cleaned her eyes, packed her luggage, and left the village to a far land where no one knows her.
Episode 3. He almost became homeless because of a one-night stand. Was he under a spell?